Today we're going to be talking about trench warfare. If you don't know what trench warfare is, it will be shortly discussed in the video, but some of the concepts include rifles, lice eggs, head lice, and mustard gas, which was deadly towards the soldiers. What is trench warfare, you may ask? Trench warfare is a type of land warfare used during World War I, which consisted of long lines of trenches. Troops inside of these trenches are protected from the enemy's small arms of fire and are sheltered from artillery. With the creation of the machine gun, trenches helped cover them in because due to the machine gun's high range and firing power, it made it difficult for troops to move easily to new positions. Although the invention and creation of the machine gun was good for both sides, it caused some troubles, such as listed down here on the paper, but with the trenches, it helped the soldiers move easily to new positions. Typical trench system in World War I consisted of a series of 2, 3, 4, or more trench lines running parallel to each other and being at least 1 mile or 1.6 kilometers in depth. The intricate network of trenches contained command posts, forward supply dumps, first aid stations, kitchens, and latrines. There was 2 sides that were opposing, and the first one was known as the Triple Alliance, which was with Germany, Italy, and Austria and Hungary. This is the flags of the 3 places. The other opposing side is called the Triple Entente, which was with Britain, Russia, and France, and as you can see, these are the flags of those places. In the trenches, there was different sections, which included frontline, support, and reserve. The frontline trenches were 7 feet deep and 6 feet wide. They were also known as parapet. They consist of a thick line of sandbags to absorb any bullets or shell fragments. So this really helped the soldiers with protection from the firearms and other stuff that was being thrown at them. The support trenches held the backup forces that could help repel an enemy attack or move quickly to the front line to support a friendly attack. So say that the front line was being attacked very badly, the support trenches would send their men up to the front line and it would help them try to win their battle. The reserve trenches were farther back than both of these. They used to give soldiers a break from being on the front lines, but still kept them close enough to the front that they could quickly go into combat. So say the front line needed help and the support group was sent up and that still wasn't enough, the reserve trenches would send their men up that were resting and they would help out whoever needed help. This is an example of a trench. As you can see to your right, it says average time spent by fighting soldiers. 50% of the soldiers were in the firing line, 10% were in the support trench, 30% were in the reserve trench, and 45% were out of the trenches. For that 45, it basically means that they were either resting or in the hospital, traveling, on leave, or in training courses. They had a dressing station, a shelter, and a communication trench. A few weapons were the rifle, the brass knuckles, and the bayonets. Diseases and lice. Trench foot was a medical condition caused by a prolonged exposure of the feet to damp, unsanitary, and cold conditions. So trench foot was very, very common here because when it would rain, the men would be in their trenches and that's where they would sleep, and that was basically their home for the entire war. So with all the other diseases going around, the rain just made it worse and it became muddy and their feet got infected, and that's where trench foot came from. Trench fever is an infection caused by loose feces, which is mainly bacteria found in the stomach walls of body loose, which is basically known as body lice inside of the stomach. Trench nephritis is an inflammation of the kidneys. Body lice and head lice. 2 diseases carried by lice are typhus and trench fever. It is known to have been estimated that up to 97% of officers and men who worked and lived in the trenches were afflicted with lice. Lice could only thrive in warm conditions, which was provided by body heat and clothing. So that's why there was so much lice and it was such a common thing. Death in the trenches. Medical services were primitive and antibiotics had not yet been discovered. Minor injuries could lead to greater problems due to diseases surrounding the trenches. Germans recorded that 50% and 25% of arm and leg wounds resulted in death. Americans recorded that 44% of casualties who developed gangrene died. So it could be a shot with the rifle or a cut in the leg or a cut in the arm, a stabbing with the bayonet, and it could easily lead you to being killed, and in most cases it did because antibiotics weren't there to help the soldiers. Death of the trenches. Some more information is that the intensity of World War I trench warfare meant about 10% of the fighting soldiers were killed. 75% of wounds came from shell fires. And that's it on trench warfare.